Servus and welcome everyone. Today we talk about the solo. In contrast to a Rufspiel, a solo is, as the name suggests, a solo game. So you play one player versus the three other players sitting on the table. However, similar to the Rufspiel, in a solo there are a total of 14 trump cards. So whatever solo you are announcing, there's always the 4 Obers and the 4 Unters, which are part of trump. However, you can call a solo in any of the 4 suits on the table. So let's make a suggestion. You would announce a solo in hearts, then the typical Ober and Unter order as given in a Rufspiel is given. Also the suit of heart cards are trump cards, and it would be just the same trump cards as in a Rufspiel. So this would be the same. The suit cards, so acorns, leaves and bells, are the same as the Rufspiel as well. So it's not any different. The only difference is that you would play 1 player versus 3 players. However, you cannot only announce a solo in the suit of hearts, you could also announce a solo in the suit of bells, or acorns or leaves. So just for an example, if you announce a solo in the suit of bells, then the heart cards become a suit. They are no longer trump cards, and then the bell cards are the new trump cards. So it's the Obers, the Unters, followed by the suit cards of the suit you announced the solo in. So a solo in bells would mean these 14 cards are your trump cards, and you could also announce a solo in acorns or leaves, and it would exchange the cards here with these cards or these. So this is for what are the trump cards in a solo, and it's a 1 versus 3. So you count your points of your tricks at the end of the game, and the 3 other players can combine their 1 tricks and count these points. So what are good cards for a solo? Since there is a total of 14 trump cards around the table, it would be good that you have at least half of these trump cards. Well, you can only have 8 cards in hand, so the maximum you can have is a total of 8 trump cards. However, 7 is sufficient. Sometimes people even play a solo with 6 or even 5 trump cards. Depends on your, tendency for risk, let's say it like that. For a solo, I would suggest that you try to decide on a solo on the first or last position. So either you are right after the dealer or you are the dealer. Because you can better decide on the first trick round what card you play. If you are the first player, you even open up the first trick round, so you are free of choice. And if you are on the position of the dealer and the first player opens up a trick round, then if it's not a suit you have in hand, you also have freedom of choice. And this is easier if you sit on these positions, because if you sit in between, so on position 2 or 3, and the player after you is also not having a suit which is played, then he or she can pick up the trick and win the trick if they play a trump card higher than yours. So this is difficult. So keep in mind that position is key in a solo game, just like in events. For the trumps, I would suggest that you have at least 4 of these high trump cards, so of the Obers and Unters, for starter. Of course, you can play a solo with just 3 or even 2 of these cards, but it gets much more difficult to win it. And again, position is relevant for that. What you see here is in my opinion, really strong solo. You have 4 of these high cards where you have the 2 highest Obers and the highest Unter. You have a suit card in hearts, which will be the announced trump card. So it will be a solo in hearts. And this ace is, as you remember, a high point card, so it gives 11 points. And then you have only 1 suit card in leaves, which is not any value. So if you play the solo on the first position, you can try to draw out the trump cards with your high Obers. Or if you're sitting on the last position and anyone is playing another suit like for example bells, then you can, since you have freedom of choice, you can throw away your leaves card, and this makes you even stronger because you give it away with few points. If the trick aggregates a lot of points, so like there's the ace and the 10 coming in and you are the last to play, well then of course you try to win the trick with the ace. However, if there are not a lot of points, like just the ace for example, and then like this is just 11 points, you are really good to just pass it away and give away your suit card, which doesn't win you any trick at all. In a solo it's quite similar to a Rufspiel, so you win the solo by winning over the different suits. So not the suit which is the trump suit like hearts in here, but by winning the other suits, like in this case leaves, bells and acorns. Why is that? Well, the thing is, the most points are the aces and the tens, and these cards are in the suit, not in the trumps. There's just one ace in trumps and one 10 in trumps. So you try to win the suits by playing your trump cards when suit is played. And the other thing what you want to try is to draw out the opponent's trump cards with your high trump cards, or sometimes even with your low trump cards. So imagine you have both the point cards in trumps, something like this. Then if you play a low trump card in a trick, then the opponents need to play their trump cards because they have to comply in trumps. And since the point cards are not there, because you have them in hand, they have to play their obers and unters or their other, in this case, hard cards. And this draws out their trumps and you can still keep your high trumps for later, because you don't have to worry that there will be points in this trick. Sometimes you are thinking about what suit is the correct suit to announce your solo in. And I have prepared an example here. So imagine these are your hand cards and you have to announce a solo. It would only be a 6 trump solo because you either have 2 acorn cards or 2 heart cards. Thus you can only have 6 trumps in total with your obers and unters. And in this case, I would suggest that you take the suit, like here, which you don't have the ace in. Because an ace will always be a high card in the respective suit. So if someone is playing acorns, you can always win the trick just by the ace in the suit. And thus, I would recommend that you announce a solo in hearts in this case, and not in acorns. And it's always a good option that you take the one you have more in. So like we have seen in the previous hand with the 3 heart cards and the 1 leaf card, of course you announce the solo in hearts, not in leaves. So the one criteria is the amount of cards you have. And if the amount of cards is a draw in these 2 suits for this example, then try to not have an ace as a trump card. Try to have it as a suit card because it can win tricks by itself without being a trump. Okay, so I have prepared a solo game. The cards are all prepared, so I know which player has which cards and I have played it out up front. So just to let you know, this is prepared. It's a solo in the suit of hearts. We have 6 trump cards, 2 obers, 2 unters, 2 heart cards, 1 ace high and 1 spare card in leaves. So as I said, it's a solo in hearts. We are at the position of the dealer and this is the player who has to start the game. So let's see what happens. The game is opened up with acorns. This player also has acorns. So does this player, and we can win the trick high with the ace. And we have to play the ace here, so we have already won 15 points with this first trick. Then we have to continue, and in this case I would continue with a trump card. So I'm opening up with the over. From the left player there is just a 7 of hearts, so he has to play a trump card. The top player also has to play a trump card with his king. And from the right hand side there is the ober in hearts, so a total of 10 points. And since we have the ober high, we have won the trick, so another 10 points for us. So we have to continue playing trump to draw out the trump cards of our opponents. And we're hoping for that, since there was the ober here high, maybe there's another high ober sitting solo there. So we play this 9 in hearts, then there's an 8 in hearts from the left player, the 10 in hearts from the top player. This is already winning the trick as of now. And unfortunately for us, the player here to the right hand side is free of trump, so he has freedom of choice to play whatever card he or she wants. And this means that they try to put in point cards in this trick that they win the game with the points. So they already have 21 points. The trick was won by the top player, so this player has to open up the next round, playing leaves. So unfortunately, they hit our weak spot, which is leaves, and we have to play leaves, so this only has one option for us. And now this player at the back is also free of leaf cards, so also freedom of choice, and this gives them another 15 points, which is not so good for us. The trick was won by the player to our right hand side, so this player is opening up the next trick round. We now can play an Unter to try to win this trick. However, the player to the left can take the trick because he has a higher trump card and doesn't have acorns anymore. The player here at the top has to comply the suit of acorns. The trick is won by the opponents again, and the player to the left opens up the next trick round. This time with bells. There's bells from the top player, from the right player, and we can win this trick with this ace. Then we open up the 7th trick round with our Unter. There comes another Ober, there comes the last Unter, and there comes another point card. And they have already won plenty of points. And the last trick was won by the left-hand player. However, we can just put in the cards in here and we win this trick with this Ober. And this is our last trick. But now let's recap. I assume this solo was not a success. It was here 15 points. Then we have a total of 25 points. Another 15 points makes it 40 points. And here it's just 13 points, which leaves us with 53 points. And as you see, even though we had 4 high cards with the Obers and Unters, 2 good trump cards and 1 ace, the cards were really not distributed in our favor at the other players. And thus you have to really think about, do I have strong cards? And sometimes 6 trumps with even high Obers and Unters are not strong enough to win such a game. So this time I showed you a negative example, so to speak, that a solo can fail. However, just keep that in mind. It's not always going into your favor. And that's just how it is. As you've seen, the solo is not really different from the Rufspiel with reference to the trump cards. The only difference is that you're playing against 3 players and you're trying to hope for a good trump card distribution at the other players. But be aware, since you are not always announcing a game in the suit of hearts, a solo in the suit of hearts, so to speak, and you could also announce in other suits like acorns, leaves or bells, you could make other players at the table quite strong because you kind of quote unquote give them trump cards which previously haven't been trump cards, which have just been suit cards. So always be aware that if you are at last position and you didn't announce a solo in the suit of hearts and you announce a solo in another suit, you can make other people at the table strong. Also, keep in mind, if someone before you wanted to announce a Rufspiel or said that they want to announce a game mode, and you are thinking about announcing a solo, you should be really wary to announce a solo in the suit of hearts. Because if a player has a Rufspiel in mind, they at least have typically 5 trump cards to announce a Rufspiel, and thus a solo in the suit of hearts leaves you maybe with more trumps in hearts. However, they might have strong trump cards as well, and a lot of them. So, just to recap, in a solo it's a 1 versus 3. You have a total of 14 trump cards, the 8 Obers and Unters, together with one of the suits which you announce for the solo. And it is good advice to have at least 7 trumps for a beginner, and preferably you play at the position 1, so right after the dealer, or position 4, so the position of the dealer. If you have any questions about the solo, just write them down in the comments below.